So this is all going to be, we have a program, but the order of it is going to be based on my mood over the next 30 minutes. So we'll see who's, I do know who's going to go first, and I'm going to have my niece Emily come up and do her songs, which are not, the listed songs are not, one song, it's not listed in the program, but she will. Wow. I thought that void meant that it was a void that I had to fill up with this talking here. But we'll bring up Emily McCloskey.
I think I'll say something afterwards, because I don't know if I'll be able to sing if I talk before. Because one of the things she always said to me was that I always did the right thing, and then I was thinking about, we were all together with her at the end, and I think we were talking about her life and how she always felt like, I think she didn't get that kind of love from her parents, and we always said, "You're the best grandma," and she was like, "Really?" Like, she always sounded so surprised, even though it was so obvious. So, but then in the end, when we were talking about it, and I think she finally realized, like, this is my family here, this is all that I needed, so it was good for her to, like, I think finally have that closure, so, yeah.
So, just to be clear, we're going to sing a lot of songs that my mom wrote, that Emily wrote that song for her, so. All the rest of the music will be Joan Wile original works, and you'll see that she was really quite an amazing composer and writer. I'm going to sort of intersperse talking with music, so we're going to bring in a couple of our speakers now. Barbara, I want you to come on up. Barbara, I'm not going to introduce everybody with their resumes here. We're all among friends. Barbara was one of her dearest and closest friends the last few years of her life. And they started going to the theater together, and they traveled on buses and trains and ferries, and planes. Watch out for the wire there, Barbara. And I will let Barbara talk.
As we know, Joan was a marvel. It was purely by chance that we met. One day in early 2004, a lady, Joan, one day in early 2004, a lady, Joan, boarded an uptown Broadway bus where I sat, perpetually angry about the war. On her backpack was a pin that said, "Where's the outrage?" She showed me, and I too became one of the grandmothers against the war. Vigiling every Wednesday from 5:30 to 6:30 at Rockefeller Center Promenade, with several members of the Vietnam Vets for Peace, trying to let passersby know why they should oppose the war. I can see Joan and Herb approaching, carrying the long stack of posters and the Grandmothers Against the War banner she had made, the letter coloring by her grandchildren. Joan and a friend, both dismayed about the Iraqi and American losses, started the vigil small, and it grew. One day, Ann Richards, walking by, gave a thumbs up. This was good. But Joan, feeling that protest in the traditional form alone had less effect than needed, and with the Raging Grannies organized a Times Square recruitment center action, for which the 18 were arrested and were ultimately acquitted, the case being supervised and guided by Norman Siegel. Joan had the knack. On very short notice, Dennis Kucinich located an empty room and helped arrange seats for a press conference in the Capitol in Washington. This in connection with the Granny lobby of 100 senators to oppose the conduct of the war. We saw a few senators, mainly we saw their aides, but we gave them all George McGovern's book, Out of Iraq. Joan, of course, so musically talented, she wrote clever anti-war songs, and with the Raging Grannies, produced song and dance programs, and a showpiece. There was Carol Houston as Barbara Bush, pearls and white hair. There was Molly Klopat as a swinger. Then there was the organizing of the 11-day trek, New York to Washington, D.C., in cooperation with Granny and other groups along the way. The purpose, promotion of the anti-war position. An invitation from Berlin for Joan to speak there. Molly and I accompanied Joan on the flights. She did not like flying. It was an opportunity for us to convey that not all Americans were in favor of the war. This was especially important in view of the U.S. use of the Ramstadt air base there. And we managed in that period to learn more about each other. I used to say to Joan, "You are a great grandmother." One got to know about each of her grandchildren, to attend their events. Craig, years ago, the little nutcracker prince. Joan had antennae, and they worked. A former granny said that when she first met Joan, she was recovering from an unhappy family matter, and that Joan's warmth contributed to her ability to cope. Mainly, Joan cared.
Thank you, Barbara. Is Vinie here? Did Vinie get here? She's not here? Okay. Barbara, do you know where Vinie is? Is she on her way, or? I don't. Okay. All right, well, and Nydia, we'll go on to Nydia.
Or are they all doing something?
Oh, that's right, you're gonna do, okay. We're gonna hold off on that. We're gonna hold off on that. All right, so you know what? We're gonna get back to some music. This is from, we're gonna sing 3 songs from what most people consider her masterpiece of musical theater, The 7 Ages of Woman, which was very loosely based on the speech from the Twelfth Night in Shakespeare, The 7 Ages of Man. And we're going to invite, he's not in the program, but we have a wonderful pianist, Darren Denman, and my sister, Dee Dee, and Emily Beck, and they're going to sing 3 songs from The 7 Ages of Woman. Before I forget, this is just an aside, everybody's invited to the bar for refreshments after this.
And look at the memorabilia up front. So this is the narration section. This is just one part of this much larger work, but these 3 songs, I think, encapsulate it beautifully. And then the whining schoolgirl with her satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. What's gonna happen to me? Will there be a happy ending? What's career. I'll practice and practice till I know my act is all set to go. I'll be self-reliant and prove I'm a giant, a threat, a pro. I'll gladly go kissless to be my own mistress. I'll chill the sensual. The world I'll discover will dwarf any lover. I'll fulfill my potential. I'll have a career. I'll show them I've got what it takes to succeed. I won't grovel those snakes at my feet. I don't care, let them plead. I've nothing to fear if I manage to steer my career, my career, my career, my career.
And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad to her lover's eyebrow.
I felt that I was safe and snug, wrapped up in my shell. I was so ridiculously smug, I never thought that I'd get caught in the proverbial magic spell. Is this really me, dancing through the streets, quoting breathlessly from Byron and from Keats, singing silly tunes of unabashed romance, losing afternoons, wandering in a trance? Is this really me, conditioning my hair? Every dress I wear, watching every pound, pouring on cologne, straining for the sound of a ringing telephone. Could this be me who acts so dumb? Could this be me who feels this way? How could I let myself succumb to this commonplace cliche? Is this really me, holding someone tight, touching eagerly, whispering in the night? Is this really me, so in love with you? And is this really me that you love too?
There's a reason I'm not performing today. It's really hard to perform when you're in the middle of a memorial service for your mother or your grandmother. So thank you to my sister and my niece. So we're going to bring up Norman Siegel, who has agreed to say a few words. And I told him he could speak to up to 2 hours, but he said he only had 4 minutes prepared. So.
On October 17th, 2005, 18 people, many of whom were grandmothers, walked towards the United States Armed Forces Recruitment Center in the middle of 43rd Street and Broadway in Manhattan. They were planning to try to enlist in the armed forces so that young people did not have to fight the war in Iraq. Joan Wile was one of the grandmothers. They chanted, "We insist, we want to enlist." They stated their opposition to the war in Iraq. Joan said it was a terrible, destructive war. They sang, "God Help America." They then sat down on the ring. They were arrested, as Barbara has already alluded to, and charged with disorderly conduct. A 5-day trial then ensued. Here is part of the final statement to the judge. These 18 defendants, some who are sitting right before me, are people of conscience who on October 17th in the year 2005 acted on principle in the great American tradition of a peaceful, nonviolent protest. They walk in the shoes of great Americans who have made this nation and this city as great as we are. We are a better society and a better city because of citizens who stand up, speak out, visibly and vocally, and are prepared when other means fail to even get arrested, to bring needed public attention to their underlying grievance. They felt so strongly in opposition to our nation's war effort in Iraq that they protested and got arrested. They did what our constitutional democracy allows for, at least as of today. What our unique, wonderful First Amendment provides for and protects, at least as of today. The right to speak out, the right to dissent, and the right to protest. The judge then dismissed the charges and acquitted all of the Granny 18. Joan Wile strongly believed in the right to protest and the right to speak out. She was one of the organizers of the October 17, 2005 protest. As Barbara has already alluded to, Joan helped organize for years weekly anti-war vigils in Rockefeller Center. Joan, as well as many in this room, are special. Joan was thoughtful, caring, principled, a person of conscience, and a social justice and an anti-war activist. It was indeed a pleasure and an honor to work with her and to get to know Joan. We will miss her greatly. Thank you.
I was just told Vinie has arrived. So let's see if we can get her on stage. Excuse me a minute, I don't know what she's going to do, but it's going to be good. So let's...
Joan would have laughed at my thinking taking a taxi would get me here faster than the subway. Two fragments, one from Langston Hughes, because Joan thought he was a great poet. Dear lovely death, that taketh all things under wing, never to kill, only to change into some other thing, this suffering flesh, to make it either more or less, but not again the same. Dear, lovely death, change is thy other name. You see, began Christopher with a long sigh, it's like sleeping for a long, long time. Christopher Robin was surrounded by his friends under his favorite tree. It rested on the top of a hill overlooking the entire 100-acre wood. He was older now, and he knew that he didn't have much more time left with them. But going to sleep means that someday you'll wake up, Pooh said with a smile. Precisely, Owl exclaimed. And we'll be here when you do, Kanga added. I'll even make you breakfast. Christopher couldn't help but smile. I would very much like that. But you all have to understand that it will be a very, very long time. We're great at waiting a long time. Rabbit here waits every year for the carrots to grow in the garden, Tigger chimed in. And every year you destroy them, Rabbit snarled. But Christopher, Roo interjected, jumping into Christopher's lap. What are we going to do when you're gone? Oh, I won't be gone, Roo. I'll be right here. And Christopher placed his finger over Roo's heart. And Roo giggled and scrunched up into a ball. We'll be just fine, muttered Eeyore. I'm used to being alone anyway. None of you will be alone. You're a family now. And while I'm gone, you will all take care of each other. But you'll be right back, Christopher, stuttered Piglet. Christopher let out a small, soft sigh and looked around at all of his friends. It was going to be difficult to help them to understand. They probably never would. Sometimes good things come to an end. But here's the secret, everyone. Come close. They all huddled together underneath the tree to listen to Christopher's secret. Memories are forever. He whispered and tapped Pooh on the nose. Memories? Said Pooh. Well, I have plenty of those, like the time we saved you from the heffalumps, or when you helped me fix my garden, cried Rabbit, or when you organized my library for me, exclaimed Owl, or that time you built a new house out of those sticks you found in the woods, Eeyore added sullenly. It didn't last the night, but I remember it. Yes, yes, all of those are memories, and you will have them forever. Just like I will have my memories of all of you. Christopher stood up and took one last look over the 100-acre wood. The sun was setting in the orange autumn sky, and the trees were beginning to lose their leaves. It was time. He went home. Christopher gathered all of his friends together and began walking back down the hill. They were all busy discussing the memories they had with each other. Christopher, Pooh said, looking up at Christopher as they walked hand in hand. You aren't coming back, are you? Christopher looked down at the ground and took a moment before he responded. No, Pooh. Pooh, I won't be coming back this time. They walked in silence, listening to the sound of the crunching leaves underneath their feet. Pooh suddenly stopped and looked intently into the ground. I believe I'm going to miss you, Christopher, he said with a soft, broken voice. Christopher leaned down and took his lifelong friend into his arms. And I'm going to miss you too, Joan.
I'm gonna miss her too. All right, so I forgot to mention earlier, everybody mark in their calendars. October 7th, it's a Sunday evening, we are performing the entire 7 Ages of Woman, and you're all invited to come to the performance. It's going to be a public performance in the bar Thalia, which we will all be going to in a few minutes, where I do a monthly salon, and the salons this year, this fall, are all based on women composers, and I figured one of them should be my mother, who was a woman composer. So we are going to do the complete 7 Ages of Woman. Please mark that in your calendars and come to Bar Thalia. And you can check on my Facebook page, our website, of my band, the New York Jazz Harmonic, that sponsors all my events. And it's also an official symphony space event. So ask me about it later and I'll give you more information. So, 7 Ages of Woman, as I said, we all consider that her masterpiece, but she wrote another song, another piece of theater. It was in the late 80s. I think she was working on it the late 80s into the early 90s. She never had performed it live. She was of the era when you wrote a piece of theater, you submitted it to producers and you crossed your fingers that they would accept it and then put on the show. Of course, today all that is different. Everybody puts on their own show all the time, you know, and put it on the internet and it goes around the world instantaneously. So this work that she considered her own masterpiece was never performed publicly in her life, and we're going to do a world premiere of one song from that. So Vicky, get ready, come on up. This is our dear family friend, Vicky, and she's going to world premiere this song, and I went through the score. She never really showed it to me. She just kept talking about her masterpiece, Socrates, which is based on Plato's Symposium. And she said, it's my, and then on her, literally on her deathbed, she said, don't forget about Socrates. And we had to scour her apartment for the music. I found one cassette of her singing it as a demo, and we couldn't find, and I was gonna have to transcribe the music and put it into paper, but finally under the bed we found the sheet music. She told me about the sheet music. We literally did scour her apartment, and we finally found the sheet music. So we are able to premiere this song, which is a song about, I think he was a Greek general who was secretly in love with Socrates, you know, back in the day. And this song, the name of the song, it's a love song, but it's an unrequited love song, and the name of the song is The Bite of the Snake. And I have to go through the rest of the show, but I think indeed this might be her masterpiece.
I'm the man who has everything, wealth, beauty, and power. Then I hear that siren sing, feel its piercing sting, and all at once my worldly assets suddenly sour. mix of ecstasy and of pain. Why am I stuck, trapped in his sway? How he must gloat. No one can suck this venom away or brew me an antidote. Thousands are dazzled as I speak. I mesmerize the throng. But I find my voice a quivering squeak when I hear his hypnotic song. It makes me look at me through his critical gaze. I dread the reflection I see. What an empty, hollow, ignominious man it portrays. The bite of the snake, a strong heart will break when it's gripped by these gnawing pangs. The bite of the snake, no man can awake from the smell of his fiery fangs. The snake is a thief, stealing your soul. Is there no relief, no way to control this treacherous thrill? I've tried to devise a scheme, I've tried to counterattack, but since I cannot win his esteem, I can't bite back.
I'm going to invite my sister Dee Dee up to speak, and I insisted she tell a certain story that we don't want to say anything negative about Mom today, but it's so funny. And the story involves my Aunt Doreen, and she's never heard the story, and my Aunt Doreen is here, so I said, well, you have to tell that story. Well, yes, you don't have to super embellish it, but anyway.
Can you lower this one? Joan Wile, aka Joan, Joni, Joan Meltzer Hoffner Wile Wasserman Sigletti. Mom, grandma, cousin, sister, aunt, friend, and sometimes wife. Here in her beloved New York City, she was one of many, and yet truly one of a kind. Joan Wile was a singer, songwriter, pianist, bass player, activist, proofreader. In fact, I would not have gotten my master's degree if she had not proofread every single one of my papers, even though I was about 40 years old at the time. Hopeless romantic and prolific writer, not only of music and song, but of poetry, stories, articles, press releases, grants, and letters, tons of letters. We found in her stash just countless letters. Her typewriter was an appendage. She inherited her intelligence, talent, creativity, drive, and her unique view of the world from both sides of her amazing family. Many of her family members are here today, and they are all amazing, great people as well. And thank goodness she has passed most of it on to her children and grandchildren as well.
today because each and every one of you meant something important to her, not just the other way around, that she meant something important to you. You each meant something to her. Even if I don't know each and every one of you personally, I can probably tell you something amazing about yourself that she told me and why she admired and appreciated you so much. Mom was a people person first and foremost. Her personal relationships were extremely important to her. She was the quintessential networker, always bringing people together, making connections with and for people. I can't possibly begin to list all of the people she has helped over the years. She also never lost touch with anyone, including all ex-boyfriends and husbands. Once you were a part of her life, you were always going to be a part of her life. And this was before Facebook. For me, as a child growing up with her, our home seemed to be sort of an Ellis Island or Statue of Liberty of the Upper West Side. She was always bringing home strays, and I mean people, not animals. Our family holidays, Thanksgivings and Christmases, were not only made up of our immediate family, but of a network of special people that were otherwise alone or in need of family and had nowhere else to go. They became part of our family, including but not limited to Rosalind and Bernard and so many others that are not with us anymore. For a while, our apartment was even a boarding house of sorts, with rooms rented out to Columbia students, young people from other countries she met through her activism over the years, not just during the grandmother years. Old friends and people in transitional times of their lives. Even when an extra room wasn't available, they could always take a couch. It was an interesting way to grow up. And looking back, obviously, I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't experienced all of it. She was a pioneer of, and actually an archetype of, single motherhood, raising 2 children basically on her own in New York City before it was Disneyified. It was still quite a dangerous place at times. One of her compatriots, and this is here with us today, Linda, lived in the building with us. They were the single mothers of their time, learning together how to do this, which seems so common today, but they needed each other and they did it together. An unfortunate side effect of growing up in New York City at that time was that she was the queen of worry, the original overprotective helicopter parent. I don't think I was allowed to go to a friend's house alone until I was about 16. My friend is shaking her head. She lived about 4 blocks away from me. She would walk me or take the bus with me and say, "I don't want you to be alone and get mugged," which I was at times. And I would say, "Well, what about you going back home alone yourself?" I can take care of myself," she would say. Joan was also a trendsetter in maintaining a good, workable relationship with my father. Even though they were divorced for most of our upbringing, between the 2 of them, Ron and I still felt very much that we had a unified family, spending holidays and celebrations together. That may seem like the norm now, but it really wasn't back then. Most of my other friends who were children of divorce were only allotted every other weekend with their fathers. One thing she was not, a cook or a shopper. I had to beg her to take me shopping. So even as Ronnie was alluding to, even as I was a growing, sort of budding teenager, had a weird shape and body, not telling her, "Mom, I really think I need new underwear." I still was wearing like the Carter's underwear from, Morris Brothers down the street. And if it weren't for my amazing aunt, who's here today, Aunt Doreen, who was the shopper of all time, who took me to the mall for the first time, and I was enthralled with the mall, to help me buy underwear for this new figure of mine. My aunt being my quintessential Brady Bunch mom, that I kind of thought that's what I was supposed to have at that time. So that's that story. One of her best qualities was that you could tell her anything without judgment. In general, she was not a judgmental person. I told her everything about my life, and she was always supportive. Most people don't feel that way about their mothers. She accepted everything about me, except for a bit of stage mothery stuff about gaining too much weight or wearing my glasses when I shouldn't have. She encouraged me and my brother and our children to be creative and follow our dreams. And you all know that she loved to brag about us. You probably know every accomplishment, performance, award, etc. that we have ever received. And yet I would say that we all ended up pretty humble ourselves. Some of you were here and already spoke about her granny peace movements, so that's not my place to talk about. But I want you to know that she was not a grandmother in name only. She spent countless hours with each and every one of her grandchildren, making them each feel special and important. She was the type of granny who would actually get down on the floor with the kids doing puzzles and activities. She took them to the park and many outings. I have to say that, of course, my son, Jake, being the first grandchild, got the most attention for 3 years. All of the grandkids that are all here today, Jake, Emily, Craig, and Livia, will tell you that they each had a special, independent, and meaningful relationship with her. I also want you to know that we were all present when she passed. No matter what anyone else is here to say or feel about her, which I'm sure is all great and all true, to me, she really was a wonderful, loving, warm, welcoming, helpful, creative, talented, intelligent person. But mostly, to me, she will always be my loving mom, best friend, closest confidant, and the best grandmother to all 4 of her grandchildren. She will live on not only in my mind and memories and her songs, but as part of me, in my body, in my movements, and my voice. I will miss her physical presence greatly, even though it hasn't truly hit me yet. She will always be with me, as she promised me when I was a child, when I would cry at night thinking about losing her. She said, I will always be there when you need me, even when I'm gone. I know that now.
Just in case you didn't know, she considered my wife Kathleen's son her 5th grandchild fully, who Michael has been in my life since he was 13. And 2 weeks after Mom passed, let's say she became a great-grandmother, because Michael had a daughter about 3 months ago. And we just went down to Florida to see her, and she's very cute. So, the grannies, we've heard a lot about them. They're all here. They're going to stand up and, what are you going to sing Joan Wile songs, or are you going to sing just? Okay, they're going to sing the old time songs. So, the grannies. You guys want to just stand up and turn around? I think that's easier. I know we talked about coming on stage. Why don't you just stand up and turn around?
This first song is one that we performed many times, and Joan, as a creative person, I would
going to wrap this up pretty quick. I think all we have is the one more song, right? Okay. So we've been to the 80s, we've been to the 60s. Now we're going to go back to the 70s when Mom was making her living as a professional musician, doing everything from nightclubs, restaurants, weddings, to jingle writing. She had some of her big hit jingles back in the 60s, in mid-70s, early 70s. But she was always writing songs, and this was one of her, before she started writing her theater pieces, this is one of the songs that she considered one of her best, and I think it is. So we're going to invite the whole family. Is Vicky singing this one too? Okay. No? Okay.
There's a certain kind of daring that's fitting for the young, with their paths yet to be traveled and their songs yet to be sung.
And there's a certain kind of wisdom you gain as you go along, as you make the twisting journey and memorize your song. Some to see the forest, some to see the trees, some to build the kingdom, some to keep the keys. We will share with one another the visions each has seen, and the gold of life will glimmer with the graying of the green.
You have things to tell me, and I will learn a lot. And I have things to tell you that maybe you forgot.
And sometimes we will differ, but let's not weigh the cost. For the one without the other, you know, is surely lost. Some to see the forest, some to see the trees, some to build the kingdom, some to keep the keys. We will share with one another the visions each has seen, and the gold of life will glimmer with the graying of the green.
Stay on stage. Stay on stage. Because I just want to give my sister and my niece a hug. So that's all we have. Thank you for coming and being a part of this very personal thing for me, obviously. We will see you in the restaurant in a few minutes. We just have to clear out the theater. Thanks to Darren. Actually, Darren will be accompanying the entire 7 Ages of Woman on October 7th. Put that in your calendar. I need an audience. That's not a family and friends only thing. 7 p.m. in where we're going to be in the restaurant. Literally about 8 steps from the door out there. So I'll see you there in a few minutes after I pack up all the equipment. We got to get out of this room now. Thank you.